There is a phrase that has been spreading through dugouts, press boxes, and clubhouses across Major League Baseball this season. Not loudly. Not as a formal complaint or an organized protest. But quietly, the way honest observations tend to spread when people are watching something happen in front of them that they do not quite have the vocabulary to describe accurately. The phrase is simple. 5 words. And it has been said, in various forms, by managers, by opposing players, by broadcasters who have covered this sport for decades and thought they had seen every combination of talent that a single roster could produce. It's unfair that the two of them are together. 5 words. And yet those 5 words contain an entire argument about competitive balance, about the nature of dynasty, about what happens when two players of generational quality find themselves wearing the same uniform at the same moment in history, each one amplifying the other, each one making the other's job simultaneously easier and more visible, each one raising the standard that the other is measured against. Last night, against the Blue Jays, those 5 words were earned again. Yoshinobu Yamamoto took the mound for the first time against Toronto since the World Series. 6 strikeouts. Commanding. Precise. The kind of performance that reminds everyone watching why his arrival in this league was treated as an event rather than simply a transaction. And Ohtani, from the other side of the equation, reached base 3 times. Including the hit that changed the game. The hit that the legend, the man watching from a position of earned authority, someone who has seen what great baseball looks like across multiple eras, described afterward with a single word that nobody expected. Ecstatic. A legend who has seen everything was ecstatic. About a single timely hit. In a regular season game. That tells you everything you need to know about what is happening with these two men right now. And why nobody in baseball has found an answer for it yet. The history between these two teams did not need to be manufactured for last night's game. The World Series had already written the first chapter. Toronto had seen both of them up close, had faced Yamamoto's precision from 60 feet and 6 inches, had watched Ohtani's at-bats with the kind of focused, collective attention that opposing teams reserve for the players they fear most. They had studied. They had prepared. They had developed specific plans for specific situations. And yet here they were again. Same opponents. Different context. But the same fundamental problem presenting itself with the same fundamental absence of a clean solution. The Blue Jays are not a weak team. That point is important and tends to get lost in the conversation about what happened last night. Their pitching staff has the depth to keep most lineups honest. Their hitters have the patience and the power to make any pitcher work. They are a professional baseball team operating at a high level, managed well, prepared thoroughly. Against Yamamoto and Ohtani in the same game, on the same night, operating at the level they were both operating at last night, none of that was enough. The stadium felt it from the first inning. There is a specific quality to the atmosphere of a game where both starting pitcher and cleanup hitter are performing at their peak simultaneously. It does not announce itself. It accumulates, pitch by pitch, at-bat by at-bat, until somewhere around the 4th or 5th inning the crowd begins to feel that what is happening in front of them has moved beyond the ordinary competitive uncertainty of a baseball game and into something that feels more like demonstration. Last night reached that point earlier than usual. 6 strikeouts. The number is clean and significant. But the number alone does not capture what Yamamoto was doing on the mound last night, does not capture the specific quality of the performance, the decision-making behind each sequence, the way he moved through the Toronto lineup with an efficiency that suggested he was operating several pitches ahead of where the hitters thought the conversation was. The first inning established the tone. Yamamoto's fastball command was sharp from the opening pitch, not the kind of sharp that a pitcher finds gradually as his arm loosens up and his mechanics settle, but immediately sharp, the kind of command that tells the catcher and the dugout within the first 3 or 4 pitches that this is going to be one of those nights. His breaking ball was the weapon that the Blue Jays were least prepared for. Not because they had not studied it. They had. The preparation was evident in the way their hitters were sitting on pitches, waiting at specific counts, looking for the ball in specific zones, trying to reduce the number of decisions they had to make in the moment by making more of them before the at-bat began. Yamamoto made those predetermined decisions irrelevant. The location of his breaking ball last night was not where his breaking ball has typically lived in previous starts. It was lower and later, arriving at a depth in the zone that the hitters had not fully prepared for, breaking through a window that their pre-game planning had not adequately mapped. Several Blue Jays hitters, watching from the dugout between their own at-bats, were visibly recalibrating, leaning forward, talking quietly, adjusting the mental picture they had brought into the game. By the fourth inning, Yamamoto had established something that the best pitchers establish in their best starts, not just an advantage in the count, not just a favorable matchup, but a psychological reality in which the hitters are no longer fully trusting their own plan. They are reacting rather than deciding. Following rather than anticipating. When a pitcher reaches that point, strikeouts are not the achievement. They are simply the inevitable record of what has already been won in the mind. The Blue Jays' memory of the World Series was present in the stadium last night in a way that was not spoken but was completely visible. There is a specific way that a team carries a previous loss into a subsequent matchup with the same opponent. It is not defeatism. It is not fear. It is something more complicated and more interesting, a heightened awareness, a sharpness of attention, a determination to be better than they were the last time while simultaneously managing the psychological weight of knowing how the last time ended. Toronto brought all of that into last night's game. Their approach in the early innings was more cautious than their typical style, more willing to take pitches, more patient at the plate, more conservative in the counts where aggression can be rewarded but also punished. They were managing the memory of Yamamoto at his best by trying to reduce the conditions under which his best is most effective. Yamamoto responded to that caution not by adjusting away from his strengths but by going deeper into them. When hitters are being patient, the pitcher who wins is the pitcher who can throw strikes that look like balls long enough to create doubt, and then throw balls that look like strikes at exactly the moment when doubt has produced the wrong decision. Yamamoto did this repeatedly last night, with a command of the psychological rhythm of pitching that players who have been in the league for a decade are still developing. He has been in the league for one full season. That context is important. Because when the legend spoke afterward, when the word ecstatic was used, when the assessment was delivered with a warmth and a specificity that went beyond routine post-game praise, it was this combination of youth and mastery that the legend was responding to. Not just the 6 strikeouts. Not just the efficiency. But the evidence that Yamamoto is learning the major league environment at a rate that even the most optimistic projections had not fully anticipated. While Yamamoto was dismantling the Toronto lineup from the mound, Ohtani was conducting a separate but equally instructive performance on the other side of the ball. 3 times reaching base in one game is a good night for any hitter. For Ohtani, in the context of this season and everything that has accumulated around it, 3 times reaching base in one game against a prepared, focused pitching staff represents something specific, a demonstration of the breadth of his offensive approach that goes beyond any single skill. The first time was a walk. Earned, patient, the result of a plate appearance in which Ohtani took a borderline pitch that most power hitters would have offered at and let it go for ball 4. The decision was not passive. It was active, a choice made in real time, based on a read of the pitcher's intention and the count situation, that produced the correct result through discipline rather than contact. The second time was a single into the gap, a line drive that was hit with the authority of a ball that was caught perfectly on the barrel, the kind of contact that produces a sound the stadium recognizes before the trajectory is fully clear. The third time was the timely hit. And that is the one that requires its own discussion. The situation when Ohtani came to the plate for that at-bat was exactly the kind of situation that separates hitters who are great from hitters who are great when it matters. Runners on base. A score that had not yet been decided. A pitcher who had been navigating the game carefully and who had, until that moment, been largely successful at limiting the damage that the lineup could do in the moments when damage was most dangerous. Ohtani had seen this pitcher twice already in the game. He had information. He had a picture, a mental model of how this pitcher was sequencing, what he was trusting in specific counts, where he was willing to go when the count tilted in the hitter's favor. The at-bat that followed was not long. It did not require the kind of extended, grinding, 12-pitch confrontation that becomes its own event within a game. It was precise. Economical. Ohtani identified the pitch he was looking for at the count where he expected it, and when it arrived, he was ready for it in a way that produced contact that was not loud but was exactly right, placed into a gap that the defense was not positioned to cover, scoring the run that changed the character of the game. That precision, the ability to be ready for the right pitch at the right count and do the right thing with it in a high-leverage situation, is the quality that coaches spend years trying to develop in hitters and that most hitters spend careers chasing. Ohtani brings it to the plate as a matter of routine. The dugout's response was immediate. The bench was on its feet before the ball had finished rolling. Not because the hit was spectacular, it was not spectacular, not in the way that a home run or an extra base hit in the gap is spectacular. Because everyone in that dugout understood what the hit represented in the context of the game and the moment. The post-game comments were what elevated the narrative from excellent baseball game to something worth examining more carefully. When a legend speaks about a performance, when someone who has earned their authority through their own excellence and their own longevity in the sport offers an assessment of what they have just witnessed, the words carry a weight that ordinary commentary does not. The word used was ecstatic. Not impressed. Not pleased. Not satisfied. Ecstatic, a word that implies an emotional response that exceeded what was expected, a reaction that surprised even the person experiencing it, a level of feeling that pushed past the measured, controlled assessments that experienced observers of the sport typically default to when they are speaking publicly about what they have seen. Ecstatic. About a timely single. In a regular season game. The explanation, delivered with the kind of specificity that only comes from someone who has internalized what good baseball actually requires, was about something beneath the surface of the hit itself. It was about the count. About the pitch type. About the location within the zone. About the fact that Ohtani had been set up, deliberately, carefully, by a pitcher executing a plan, to chase a pitch that he had no business handling productively. And had not chased it. Had waited. Had found the next pitch. Had done exactly what the situation required and nothing more. That combination, the patience, the recognition, the execution, was what produced the ecstatic response. Because a legend who has seen enough baseball to know what it looks like when a hitter is truly in command of an at-bat, rather than simply succeeding within one, can tell the difference. Last night, Ohtani was in command. Return now to those 5 words. Because they deserve more examination than they typically receive. It's unfair that the two of them are together. The argument embedded in that phrase is not simply about talent concentration, about the fact that 2 exceptional players happen to wear the same uniform. That happens in every sport. It has happened throughout baseball history. Teams have always had more than one outstanding player. The argument is about something more specific. About the way Yamamoto and Ohtani interact, not personally, not in the dugout, but on the field, in the mechanical reality of how their respective excellences compound each other's value. When Yamamoto is pitching and the offense needs to score just enough runs to support his performance, Ohtani's presence in the lineup changes the calculation for every opposing pitcher. His threat transforms the plate appearances of every hitter around him, the way they are pitched to, the counts they receive, the pitches they see. The hits that come from favorable counts, the walks that create base runners, the pressure that forces pitchers into zones they would rather avoid, all of it is downstream of what Ohtani forces opposing pitchers to think about before they even decide where to start the hitter in front of him. And when Ohtani needs to deliver in a high-leverage moment, the fact that the team's run prevention is anchored by Yamamoto changes the psychological weight of each individual offensive moment. A timely hit is not just a timely hit. It is the timely hit that, combined with Yamamoto's work on the mound, is likely to be enough. The margin is different. The pressure is different. They make each other better by making the game's arithmetic simpler for their team and more complicated for everyone else. That is the unfairness. And there is no rule against it. Toronto's clubhouse after the game was quiet in the specific way that a team is quiet when they have played well and still lost, when the loss cannot be attributed to errors or poor decisions or a failure of preparation, but simply to the fact that the opposition was better on this particular night. Their pitching had been competitive. Their approach at the plate had been professional. Their defense had not let them down. They had done, in most measurable respects, what a good baseball team is supposed to do. Yamamoto and Ohtani had simply been better. That is the most honest summary of what the Blue Jays witnessed last night. Not a failure of their own. A demonstration by the opposition. A reminder that the combination they are facing, the specific, compounding, mutually reinforcing excellence of these two players operating simultaneously, represents something that preparation can manage but cannot neutralize. You can have a plan for Yamamoto. You can have a plan for Ohtani. You cannot fully have a plan for both of them at once, because the plans interfere with each other, and the adjustments required to address one create vulnerabilities to the other. That is the problem Toronto came into last night knowing they had. It is the problem they left the stadium still having. It is the problem that every team on the schedule is going to face. What happened last night was a regular season game. The standings were affected by exactly the number they are always affected by: one win, one loss, one game in a season that contains 162 of them. Mathematically, it was ordinary. But baseball is not only mathematics. It is also accumulation, the building of a narrative across a long season, the gradual revelation of what a team actually is rather than what it appeared to be in spring training or on paper in the off-season. And what last night added to that accumulation was specific and significant. Yamamoto, in his first game against this opponent since the World Series, was better than he was in the World Series. That sentence should not be possible. It is. 6 strikeouts. Commanding from the first pitch. Operating with the confidence of someone who has processed the previous encounter and arrived at a cleaner, sharper, more certain version of his own approach. Ohtani, in a game that did not require a home run or a dramatic moment to be defined as a success, delivered 3 times on base, including the hit that the game required in the moment the game required it. Quietly. Efficiently. Without ceremony. And a legend watched it all and was ecstatic. 5 words are still spreading through the sport. Through dugouts and press boxes and clubhouses where people who know baseball are trying to find the answer to a problem that currently does not have one. It's unfair that the two of them are together. They are together. They are not going anywhere. And based on what happened last night, they are both still getting better.